we're gonna do we're gonna do what we did last time and divide this up into two segments. I want this to be casual, so we're just rolling now. This is the beginning of the episode, and I'll introduce you guys real quick. But for everybody tuning in, welcome to Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategy. We have a great panel for you today with Bridget, Andrea, and Julia. So we're all really excited to be here with you. Just want to let you know that we are going to be going through a rebrand in the near future. So we'll make it really loud, and I'll talk about this like very briefly, but at the beginning of episodes for a bit. You're going to see the name shift from Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategy to the Hiring Success Show, because we want to make sure we're providing a holistic perspective on how executive leaderships, hiring managers, and talent acquisition professionals can work together to drive hiring outcomes. Because as everyone here knows that's in talent acquisition, we can do everything we can to implement best practices, process technology, establish a world-class team. But if we don't have hiring managers that are bought into the process or executive leaders that understand how to hire, then there's really not a whole lot we can do if somebody else isn't willing to follow best practices or isn't educated on that. So we're going to be helping provide talent acquisition executives on insights to help coach their counterparts within the organization. And we're also going to be sharing insights, so founder CEOs tuning in will be able to have actionable takeaways from the show as well. We are still going to get technical at times and dive into how to implement process and tech, but then we're also going to be doing high-level thought leadership. So I'm really excited about the direction the show's taking. And that's just a quick update for you. But okay, so our panel, Bridget, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us again today.
Happy to be here. Excited for our conversation today.
And welcome back, Julia. What's up?
Oh my gosh, so happy to be here. Thank you for the welcome.
Andrea, what's going on?
All good. Good to be here. And yeah, let's get it started.
All right, let's do the thing. So the first topic today, where did we want to start? Do we want to start with the Future of Jobs report and just like, do we want to go through that right now? Should we start?
I think that's a good starting point, because that can lead us into our next topics, which are closely aligned and related.
Okay, cool. So Andrea, do you want to lead the charge on this? What's going on with the Future of Jobs and current job reports?
Sure. So the World Economic Forum has recently come out with their most recent report on the future of jobs. They do this every 6 months. Their findings, and I'm going to read here because this is important, are based on a survey of 803 companies that employ a total of over 11 million workers in 45 different economies around the world. So that's what the survey is based on. And they ask typically a lot of questions when it comes to how companies are looking at jobs and their hiring goals in the next year or 6 months. Their findings, the most important ones, will link the report in the description. But the most important one, I would say, is that they're saying that in the next 5 years, some 23% of jobs could be disrupted. So what they're saying is that they expect 14 million fewer jobs overall in the next 5 years' time, because of course jobs will be created, but they're saying that some jobs will disappear as well, and the created ones won't happen at the same rate due to technology, AI in particular. Now we can all chat about that because I have some opinions. I do think that with new technology emerging, you can't really tell what types of new jobs will appear. There'll be more than we think, in my opinion. And another crucial finding they had was that the largest losses of jobs are expected in admin roles, factory and e-commerce, so anything that can be automated. And then on the other end, boosting of job creations, they think are going to happen in particular in education, agriculture, and health. So yeah, these are the most important findings. But when it comes to the disappearance of those jobs, I'm curious of your thoughts as well here on this topic.
Julia, what do you think?
So I think this has been happening since the dawn of man. Like every time new technology comes out, people freak out. They're like, oh my God, this is going to totally change. Like I remember reading an article about in the 1800s when the printing press was invented, people were like, oh no, like this is going to destroy our economy. This is going to destroy jobs. Like it was literally the exact same public outcry and public panic. And now our economy just looks different. Like jobs have been created that we couldn't have possibly anticipated. So
Exactly.
and also my general like ethos is to not panic. Like that's just kind of my, like standard response to things. So I personally, yeah, our economy will definitely shift. The jobs that exist will change. New jobs will be created that we've never even anticipated before. But I think it'll be a net gain, just like every other tech, I don't know, innovation has been.
Bridget, what are your thoughts?
I think it, just as Julia pointed out, that we are continue to evolve and adapt. I think that things that are routine and mundane and can be automated will be. That's exactly what Chat GPT says when you ask this very question, that there's nothing to say that it's going to be more or less, that the things that can be automated will be. They're talking about self-driving trucks, and there'll be a reduction of truck drivers in the workforce. And so people will need to retrain and evolve into different roles. So I think that it's just going to shift placement of where people are working and how they're working. We can all work smarter and better and faster.
So all of you are pretty optimistic. Nobody here thinks we're all going to be like dead in the next 5 years, or this is the end of humanity.
I mean, and if we are like, all right, I don't know.
What the hell are we gonna do about
I don't panic, y'all. Like it's gonna be fine.
I mean, not the end, but I do have a caveat that I would add related to Bridget's point as well. We are optimistic, and we do know that technology also creates new jobs that we can't even think of, but that doesn't mean that we should take our eyes off the ball of reconversion and having reconversion programs for people much more accessible.
What's reconversion mean? Sorry, I'm like 6 years old.
So basically retraining someone for a different industry or a very different type of job, and really making sure that these programs are accessible, especially in this day and age when things are moving incredibly fast on the technology lane. And with that, also social safety nets, maybe looking a bit more on that front as well, and seeing how we can support people through this process to make sure that we do have that optimistic future that we three see, at least.
Well, I think the issue, like with the disruption that's going to happen, is it's going to start to happen at an accelerated clip. So previously with the implementation of technology, it could have taken several years for companies to adapt, but already with technologies like Chat GPT, we're seeing companies adapt it within a few months, and not just like small scale companies, but companies like Salesforce rolling out changes, leveraging this technology incredibly fast. And so the issue with some of this disruption is that it could create further unemployment at a very accelerated clip that we haven't seen before in the past. So, that's kind of like like to Julia's point, like looking throughout history, and there certainly are parallels, and that's a sound perspective and argument to bring to the table. And then the flip side of that, or the argument against that, is that as technology advances, it could potentially become more dangerous. And do we look at it through the same lens as we did a couple of years, a couple hundred years ago? So I don't want to get into this topic, but gun control is an option of that, right? Like, the type of guns we have today are significantly different, and so the question just becomes like, well, do we focus on like constitutional rights, or do we have to make amendments based on how technology is evolving? So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but that's just an example, right? In a different kind of parallel to have kind of an analogous argument there. But I think what we're going to need to see, and this is my kind of like thought process, is I think AI is going to disrupt jobs. I think that it's going to do so in a way that probably is going to hurt blue collar and white collar economies. And I think that what we're going to end up doing is highly regulating AI and its impact within the companies. And I think a lot of this is probably going to happen less like last second and like rush through Congress and the EU. I think EU will probably be a little bit more proactive, but the reality is that I think that the disruption will happen, but it's going to need to be artificially slowed down by regulation so that we can adapt. And then I just don't know, in terms of like job growth overall, incorporating AI, like I don't fucking know. I have no idea like how like this is actually going to impact like available jobs. I think it is like scary though, and I think we need to have a healthy level of fear and anxiety. Like to Julia's point, we can't just like freak out. But like we are going to need to think critically and independently. We're going to have to put like politics aside, and we're going to you need to ask like the big questions. And it's like really interesting to see like we're getting to a point where critical thought and independent thought really matters, and you start to see like the big questions need to be asked again about like what we need to do as like a species, is like what is humanity and how are we going to work together to figure this stuff out, because it's just a lot of the big questions that people were started asking you know, a couple thousand years ago or before, I feel like are becoming very prevalent again, just based on like the pressures we're seeing with AI and global warming and all this kind of stuff. So,
And you're saying you think the net effect will be negative, like you think this will hurt both blue and
I don't know. Like, I think it will. Yeah, I think it has the potential to really screw up our economy. I think it has the potential to throw things out of whack where like there's a few companies that are going to like really like just take over essentially, and whoever is control of this technology, right? So whether that's OpenAI or different companies, and I think that it's going to take regulation to slow down this disruption so that the economy can adjust and we don't have higher higher unemployment rates just skyrocket as a result of like a large amount of disruption. Is my like thought process.
I feel like the outcome is very open right now. I mean, it really depends on what we all do as governments, as authorities in general, as companies who develop this and implement this. It all depends on what we're going to do. And it all starts with those questions, I believe the same, James, with probably the most important one being, how do we want this world to look like, right? And maybe start from there. How do we want things to look like for people to be safe, to have jobs, for the economy to run well, and then work backwards, just like you would work towards any goal, right? Through, again, retraining, social safety nets. But yeah, in my opinion, the outcome is very open. It all depends on what we're going to do and how fast governments really act.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like just the bigger question of like AI and humanity. I don't know. My head always just goes here, but like people are like, oh, you know, we're screwed. Like, I don't think we can know that. It's like trying to figure out how AI is ultimately going to impact humanity is like trying to figure out, like, prove that God exists. Like, if we don't have the ability to comprehend it, then it's incomprehensible. And how are we therefore going to like figure it the fuck out?
right.
Like,
There can't be like definitive proof in any direction.
Right. It's like, it's very hard to know like something that would be well above like our intellectual weight class. Like, how are we going to actually, and I'm not saying that those questions are impossible to solve. They're important questions that we should be asking, but it's very difficult to really to know. The best we can do is just like, you know, inductive reasoning, like scientific method, try to like get a sense of like, okay, here's a couple of theories we can put forth, but I don't think anybody really knows. And I think it's just like fear of the unknown, right? That's
not
like,
even the CEO of OpenAI. I think he even said that in an article or something. He doesn't even know. So
yeah,
I don't know what chance we have.
I don't think that like if anybody were to claim to know, that
True.
seems very ignorant to me.
Well, didn't that one of the pioneers of AI step down from Google out of concern for what could be happening, and that we need to take a step back before we kind of take multiple steps forward, that we need to make sure that we are progressing with AI, but we need to put more guardrails on it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we want to make sure that it's not being developed unchecked, because then you're just opening the floodgates for all kinds of crazy stuff to happen.
It's Pandora's box, like literally.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it sounds like this person, I don't know who this is, like wants to take on a different role and take on this advocacy awareness role. But like, I think I don't know, but he didn't step down because he wasn't in agreement with Google, or did he step down because he like didn't like the direction, or just more so because he wanted to do something else and
I
like
think the
bring
speed
awareness
of the direction.
Yeah, it's the fears and the dangers of the technology. And one of the clips or the excerpts said that, you know, the godfather of AI says AI could kill humans and there might be no way to stop it. I mean, that's obviously to catch somebody's attention, to get them into the article, but it's more of AI eliminating opportunity and positions for people is ultimately what it was getting at, and not so much about killing people.
And I think
Right.
it's also related to what we were talking about earlier. I think that's his concern too, that governments can't be as quick to act as the technology is evolving. Like the technology is much quicker than governments are to put those guardrails in place. I think that's the concern, the biggest one.
I think so. I think like, I don't know. I feel like, again, there's a lot of analogies here. This is why the big questions really matter.
Mhm.
Like asking things like people have a fear of death because we don't know what happens after death. And like there's that level of uncertainty, right? That's why we're so like people are afraid because we don't nobody knows, right? Like people have beliefs, but there's a difference between beliefs and the truth, and truth requires evidence. We don't have evidence, right? So we have faith and belief and these types of things, right? And whatever belief system that we have. And so I think that that's like essentially what's going on with this fear. I think it's, again, like it's reasonable and we should be asking these questions just like we ask other big questions.
And
But
fear
yeah,
is
like
good.
nobody knows.
I mean, in a sense, fear is good for us as humans, right? It keeps us safe. The level of fear, of course, we can talk about that, but fear in general, that's a good thing. It means that you need to pay attention to something.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, so I don't know if you guys have ever asked Chat GPT, but like the speed of advancement of AI, like I'll ask it about, like I'm talking, like I'll ask questions surrounding that because it's
Mhm.
just kind of fun.
What does
Um,
it say?
Well, it talks like you know, I asked you know, what would need to happen in order for AI to become self-aware? Because like to me, that's like the scariest thing. I don't know why, but it's like if it has a
Oh, because
its
that's
own kind of
every sci-fi movie where we lose to the robots. So that's why
right.
you're
Well,
that.
there's
right.
like it's like I don't know where I heard this. It was a friend, but I don't know where she got it from. But she talks about like sci-fi movies are basically preparing the human race for the future to come.
This is what's happening. So just get ready emotionally.
Right? Just prepare, buckle up. But yeah, so I think so what basically talks about, like there's a lot of things that it seems like we're pretty far away from for like a true like self-aware artificial intelligence, but it talks about like development of advanced neural networks, process and interpret sensory data in a way that is similar to how the human brain works. This would require development of more advanced neural networks that are capable of processing complex information and making decisions based on that information. So sensory data is interesting. I never really thought about that
Me either.
aspect. Ability to learn from experience, right? So like self-taught, I think, is that the same as self-taught? But ability to learn from experience, self-aware, and this requires the ability to learn from experience, to adapt to new situations. AI systems would need to be able to learn from their environment and develop a sense of self that is based on their experiences. So that's really interesting, right? Like, and it's interesting to see the parallels of like understanding the correlation between how our brains work, like how much like of our sense of self is based on our life experiences and how that impacts our decision making moving forward, right?
Yeah.
And then we do the thing too, it's like we create stories and meanings behind the experiences that we have. Like AI would have to do that. Like the
We
same
want to
thing
fill
could,
in the gaps. Yeah.
right? Like the same thing could happen to two people, but they could attach completely different meanings and stories to that, and
Mhm.
thus have like very different, outcomes throughout their life based on actions they take, based on their belief systems and whatnot.
Absolutely. And that's like my big takeaway from this whole conversation is, like you were saying earlier, Andrea, there's still the need for personal responsibility. Like there's so much unknown, like we're talking about. So like you said, what do we want the world to look like? And we work backwards from there. I think that's so important on an individual level too. Like, yes, there's the need for like restrictions and massive governmental parameters and individual companies to make distinctions about how they are or are not going to use AI. But then as an individual person, I am very passionate about personal responsibility. Like, what do I like the Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. I know that's so cliche, but that is literally how I try to live my life every day. And I think that is kind of what it all boils down to for each of us as practitioners in the tech space, for the people that we talk to, the teams that we hire for. Like, I think that is a really important kind of takeaway for all of us to individually incorporate no matter what happens in the larger tech scene and in the world, I think that is ultimately the thing that we have control over.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So this is an interesting one. Integration of memory and emotions. Self-awareness also says involves, and I don't know if I agree with this one, but curious to get your thoughts. Integration of memory and emotions. Self-awareness also involves the integration of memory and emotions. AI systems would need to be able to store and recall information from past experiences and develop emotional responses to those experiences. And do you need emotion to be self-aware? I don't know. I mean,
I think
that's
you
like
have to have
human.
experience to be self-aware. And can AI have experience, like true, real experience, where you've got social responsibility, you've got ethical concerns, you've got those types of things that are built into it to be able to act or respond in the best interest of humanity?
Mm-hmm.
Can it get there? I don't know.
I think it will. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like our brain is a machine, right? I mean, everything is like what's really interesting about where we are, like where humanity is that everything is now seen as an engineering problem. It's like, you know, less and less is seen through the purview or traditional purview of like, this is like, you know, beyond our understanding, or like this is, you know, due to God, right? Like everything is like, as we learn more about science, we put things into different principles, whether it's like physics or biology or chemistry or whatever it might be. It's like we start to kind of reallocate our belief system into these different disciplines. And so that's just, it's really weird. Like right now, it's like, it seems like still this is like this unexplored area. We don't know, understand it. But I think people are just continuously gaining confidence that essentially most things in life are like an engineering problem, right? And then it's just about like how to advance technology to the point of our brains. And this last point is actually really interesting too. Understanding of consciousness. Finally, in order to become self-aware, AI systems would need to be able to understand the value of consciousness and subjective experience. This is complex and still poorly understood area of neuroscience, and it is unclear how this could be achieved in a machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
Consciousness
even
and
sure
subjective experience.
how would we tell? Like, that's why I think it's saying they don't know how they can achieve it, because even with ChatGPT, like sometimes it can trick you that it's actually that, right? But it's not that. It's
No,
a
it's
language
not.
programming model, so it's just estimating what the next word should be based on a lot of information. So I don't know, tough questions there, to be honest.
Right. It's really nature of consciousness and subjective experience. Huh.
That's a
find that
big
really-
bridge right there that it's going to have to cross in order to really respond in a human manner, because we are all shaped by our experience. We're shaped by our values and by our faith.
Well, are like, so the other thing is like they keep saying human. Like, I don't know, maybe this is a dumb question. I don't know. Other animals are conscious too, right? Or is it like, I don't know, right?
Yeah,
I
they're
mean, yeah, like fucking
conscious.
dolphins are conscious.
Yes.
Or
Dolphins are
orcas,
conscious. Like
for
what?
example, are extremely intelligent,
Because
or
of
Right.
the advanced emotional processing component, like all the things you've listed today, basically, animals do not share those capabilities.
Well,
in general, they don't.
I
Very
mean,
few.
I
like,
watched something on
some-
Netflix where like dolphins can talk. You know, they got all sorts
No
of
one's
sound.
saying they can't talk. No one said that. But you're talking about very advanced emotional responses.
We
Well,
love dolphins over here. So
Yeah, right. James is like, don't talk shit about dolphins.
Killer whales,
It's
killer
dolphins.
whales. Those fuckers are smart. But
and
like
orcas again. I'm a big
orcas.
fan. Yes.
Yeah.
Look them up honestly. They are amazing creatures. Yes.
Yeah.
Quick sidetrack, yes.
Yeah.
But you're just not going to see a dolphin get their PhD. Like, I think that's what we're all trying to clarify here right now. They are very smart. They are,
They don't have countries.
No one's knocking.
They're
No
not
one is
they're
knocking dolphins,
They're
okay?
not building countries. I get it.
Correct. They're not, but right.
Yeah, they don't have a bunch of imagined concepts. They live in the physical world more than
Yeah,
we do.
like the dolphins did not create AI. Like, let's just make sure that's clear here. In this conversation. James, like, or did they? Maybe
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it depends on did we create it or Where
Do
does
you know
life begin?
anything in this world? Not really.
We're
Yeah,
just a
James,
So
there's no
continuation.
knowables. Nothing is known. Nothing is knowable.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other kind of thoughts on AI's impact to jobs over the next 5 years? Just pulling back into something related to like hiring. I don't
I
know,
would just
employees.
repeat my conclusion of it can be an optimistic outcome if governments act, if we act as well on a personal level. I agree, Julia, that we definitely influence each other and we can also impact that change and kind of guide where we go. That would be my lasting idea here.
Yeah. We will actually, we're going to end this segment. For everybody tuning in, we're doing 2 segments. This is going to be split across 2 episodes. So this is segment 1 of the show. So thank you for joining us, and make sure to join us this upcoming episode for the remainder of segment 2, where we're going to be talking about some of the strikes that we're seeing right now. Writers' strike, the approved American Airlines strike, which I don't think they've actually gone on strike. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be diving into potential correlations between high inflation environments and strikes and all sorts of really interesting things. And I think, we might even talk again about how AI and job disruption could be leading to potentially more unionized support for regulation. So anyways, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.